Hello and welcome. I am Gimba Umar. Tonight, INEC once again attacks on its staff as coalition of civil society groups demand mandatory use of the card reader. Hope rekindles for the All Progressives Congress in Taraba State as Court of Appeal affirms Sani Danladi as the rightful governorship candidate. President Muhammad Buhari meets Labour leaders in the presidential villa, asks PDP to explain oil money spending under their watch. And Algeria's President Abdelaziz Bouteflika warns of risk of chaos in the country's mass protests.
On business news tonight, Bureau of Public Enterprises inaugurates committee to tackle challenges affecting private enterprises in the country.
And on sports news tonight, AS Roma sacked head coach Eusebio Di Francisco after the Italian club crashed out of the UEFA Champions League.
And from Abuja, politicians reach finishing line in their campaigns ahead of the governorship and State House of Assembly elections.
Nigerians of voting age are back again to the polls this weekend to elect governors and State House of Assembly members. The Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, is already distributing electoral materials to states, but the chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, is warning that the commission will not tolerate any attempt to assault or attack staff of INEC during the elections. He says that politicians must learn to play according to the rules, and those who attack INEC officials will not be given the certificate of return. The INEC chairman was speaking today during a briefing at the INEC headquarters in Abuja.
We are glad that the police has made several arrests and investigation is ongoing. I wish to assure Nigerians that the Commission will work very closely with the Inspector General of Police and the Nigerian Police to ensure the diligent prosecution of all violators of our electoral laws. Citizens are asking for effective but non-intrusive protection before, during, and immediately after elections, in which their rights are respected and their choices safeguarded. The Commission is concerned that many of our materials, including ballot boxes, voting cubicles, voters' registers, and smart card readers were lost to acts of hooliganism and thuggery in the elections held 2 weeks ago. Most worrisome is the attack on electoral officials. Some of our staff were abducted and taken hostage in an attempt to disrupt elections or influence the outcome. In fact, some of the supplementary elections I referred to earlier were caused by such acts of thuggery. I'm confident that working together with the security agencies will consolidate on the largely peaceful conduct of the Presidential and National Assembly elections, while also taking decisive steps to deal with the minority of violators intent on disrupting the conduct of peaceful elections. However, the Commission will not tolerate the act of holding our officials hostage and forcing them to declare winners under duress. Where such occurs, the Commission will not reward bad behavior by issuing them the certificates of return.
For the coalition of civil society groups, the advice to INEC is to ensure that the use of the card reader is mandatory. The group is also concerned about the massive deployment of military for Saturday's elections. This formed the issues raised today by the Civil Society Situation Room and the Center for Democracy and Development in Abuja.
Ahead of the governorship and state assembly elections in Nigeria, civil society groups in Abuja are raising serious concerns about situations that could impact on the credibility of the polls. At this news conference, the spokesperson of the Civil Society Situation Room, Clement Nwoko, is concerned about the heavy deployment of soldiers to states ahead of the elections. He also calls on the Independent National Electoral Commission to resist pressure from politicians who are calling for redeployment of some resident electoral commissioners in some states.
INEC had committed not to yield to pressure from politicians seeking transfer of specific resident electoral commissioners recs with replacements of amenable recs to compromise the elections. We expect INEC to follow through with its commitment on this. The situation notes the worrying trend of increased and excessive involvement of the military and security officials in elections in Nigeria. This cannot be a democratically conducted election if the military are disinvolved. And we need to go back to the drawing table to ask ourselves how to conduct elections without the partisan involvement and interference in the electoral process by the military.
In a similar vein, the Center for Democracy and Development is asking INEC to perfect its card reader machines and ensure that the technology is used across the state.
Taking all these notes into consideration, we ask INEC to make sure that in the elections on Saturday, the smart card reader must be compulsorily utilized in the elections, and in the absence of the use, 0 votes must be recorded in any polling unit where such is occasioned. Anywhere there is no use of the card reader, as INEC has stipulated in its guideline, 0 votes must be recorded, and there must be a uniform application of the use of the smart card reader.
The just concluded February 23rd Presidential and National Assembly election was criticized by civil society groups as below the threshold of a credible election. This is the reason why they are insisting on the need for INEC as well as other stakeholders to work hard and improve the quality of the state's elections.
The Nigerian army says that it will not succumb to what it calls blackmail from any group accusing them of interference in the electoral process. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, today dismissed calls not to deploy the army for electoral duties and warned those preparing to foment trouble in Saturday's elections to be guided. The Army Chief met with European Union representatives in Abuja. Our correspondent Amaka Okafo reports.
The Chief of Army Staff and other officers of the Nigerian Army at a meeting with the European Union Election Observation Mission.
We were invited to observe both.
The mission led by the Deputy Chief of Missions, Mrs. Hannah Roberts, is on a fact-finding mission on election security.
It's very important for us to understand a little more of some of the security challenges that there are in such an extensive operation as an election in Nigeria, and the way that your services have approached this, some of the challenges that you've had, and the way that you see things going forward.
The Chief of Army Staff debunks accusations of interference in the elections.
The impression created in some quarters that we were interfering is far from it. We are doing our professional responsibility as provided in the Constitution. And only those who do not wish the country well, and only those who benefit from the insecurity and the crisis that they generate will cry against the military, supporting the civil authority, supporting the police to do their job.
He insists that the military remains apolitical.
The Nigerian Army is not strictly involved in the election process. We are on a standby arrangement to support the Nigerian police force and other security agencies.
The Nigerian Army had been accused in some quarters of interfering with the presidential elections and have been accused of planning to do the same in the governorship and state assembly polls. Amaka Okafo, Channels Television
Thank you
News.
for receiving us this afternoon.
In the meantime, the vice presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, the PDP, Mr. Pt.1, will not agree with the Chief of Army Staff's position as he insists that the Army has no business during the conduct of the elections. Mr. Obi, who took a swipe on the army, says that plans to militarize the South or anywhere else in the governorship or House of Assembly elections is not good for the elections. Mr. Obi spoke with journalists in Awka, the Anambra State capital.
All of us, starting from the federal government to all Nigerians, should ensure that this election does not in any way reflect what happened on the 22nd of February, which is impacting negatively in our country. They should ensure free and fair election, especially in certain areas of Nigeria. Number one is the South-South. Elections should be free in South-South. This idea of trying to cause mayhem and disruption in the South-South should not be encouraged in any way. The South-South governors are already doing very well and should be encouraged. And South-South is critical to Nigeria and development of this country. Southeast, I know, is peaceful. That should be maintained. Areas of the north, they should be allowed to have free and fair election. What happened in Lagos should not be allowed again. People should be free to choose whoever they want to serve them. After all, the two main contenders in Lagos are all Lagosians. They are Yorubas, they're not foreigners. So people should be allowed to choose who is the best. This idea of trying to distort what is happening there is not good for the country.
Fortune seems to be smiling at the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress, the APC, in Taraba State, Mr. Sani Nladi, as the Court of Appeal today upturned an earlier court judgment disqualifying him as the candidate. With this latest development, he remains the candidate of the APC in Saturday's governorship elections. The court gave the order today, barely 24 hours after the Federal High Court in Jalingo disqualified him from participating in the coming governorship elections in the state. The APC candidate was disqualified from the elections over the allegations of improper declaration of age. Similarly, the Court of Appeal has affirmed Senator Ayogu Eze as the governorship candidate of the All Progressives Congress in Enugu State ahead of Saturday's governorship elections. The appellate court, in a unanimous judgment delivered by Justice Abdul Aboki, upheld the appeal filed by Senator Ayogu Eze to affirm him as the rightful nominated candidate to represent the party. Justice Aboki voided the Federal High Court's decision, which had earlier ruled against the candidate on the grounds that the suit brought before it had become status barred and cannot be competent in law, having been filed outside the mandatory 14 days stipulated by Section 285, subsection 9 of the 1999 Constitution. More stories now. Visitors have continued to throng the presidential villa to congratulate the president following his victory at the last elections. The latest visitors in the villa is the leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress. President Muhammad Buhari told his visitors that he will implore and improve on the economy and strive towards ensuring that the needs of Nigerians are met at all times.
You are in your long negotiations with our Honorable Minister of Labour. When he briefed us in council, I had to intervene occasionally and brief them on the cultural Hausa culture background I have when we are demanding for just over 30,000 naira per month as the lowest level. I told him about the Hausa culture, which I was brought in, that our maid woman went to make firewood. She made the firewood, she tied it, she couldn't carry it. Instead of reducing, she went and brought more. I said, we are struggling to survive as a nation. You knew what this country was earning between 1999 and 2014. You knew the status of infrastructure when we came in. After this long term God gave them and Nigerians gave them of 16 years with unprecedented earning from petroleum, Never in the history of petroleum. Nigeria earned so much because I was a minister for 3¼ years in petroleum ministry. The average production, I said, was 2.1 million barrels a day. At the average cost of $100 American per barrel, it went up to 143. So you multiply 2.1 million by 100 by 16 years. I don't think the PDP has been able to successfully explain to this country what they did with that money.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. In part 2, after the break, it's World Book Day as corporate executives take opportunity to encourage reading in public schools. Join us again.